Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today we are back with some big lore to go over. If you weren't aware, the current season for the Division 2 Year 5 Season 2 is set to end in under 1 week now, and just like it did at the end of Year 5 Season 1, today I want to recap, reframe, and present you all with all of the information we learned throughout this season from the Descent lore entries. Now, in case you don't know what I'm referring to, the Descent game mode has a weekly project where if you go in and defeat the Nemesis, you earn one collectible comm, the same kinds that are delivered during the manhunts, etc. And ever since these things began getting released with the mode's launch in Season 1, people realized how vital some of these entries are. They reveal some pretty big information and shine light on some key topics that players seem to be quite interested in. In case you missed that last video, by the way, and want to catch up on everything, I will link it in the upper corner as well as down in the description. But that said, I like to do these videos and recap all of that information, and that is primarily for the reason that I know many of you don't have these comms. Whether you just aren't a fan of the Descent premise, you find it too difficult to consistently reach the Nemesis, or you just fell behind by a few weeks, the mode doesn't offer much of a track to catch up on these comms. I know more than a few of you are missing out on these, but not to fear, that's what I'm here for. I grinded out Descent this season in order to be able to deliver you this video, so I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, and you're not already subscribed, I would appreciate you hitting that as well as that shiny like button. Helps me out a lot and validates some of the time I spent getting these. But anyways, let's not waste any more time and get right to it. Only thing to explain before diving in, the way I break these down is not just by going down the list of comms and reenacting them. Rather, I re-listened to each one, took some notes, and I've then restructured their order to group them by subject. There's a few different plot threads. I sorted them by chronology, if that's relevant, and basically I just translated their content into a more consumable and presentable format, which hopefully should be entertaining to listen to. So, without further ado, here is my recap of the 17 Descent comms for Year 5 Season 2. The first main subplot involves Calvin McManus, Secretary of Homeland Security, and the unnamed NSA analyst. These two's first interactions came out during Season 1. We got some brief hints of their overall story, like how they were using early Isaac iterations in NSA operations, including gaining intelligence on cartels, as well as how this NSA analyst was tracking Gordon Amherst, the creator of the green poison, before the outbreak ever occurred. This season, however, we now have much more, if not the full picture of their interactions, and some of these seem to go earlier than those past entries, some later, in between. Here they are. Firstly, we hear about how Calvin McManus wants to equip all non-field operative NSA employees with the Isaac technology. The analyst confirms that he understands this means that any civilian location those people go to will get the data scraped from any wireless connections, meaning people's phones, etc. Cal affirms that yes, he understands, and he stresses that they need to run this internal test of Isaac's capabilities because he doesn't want to blindly trust Ortiz Robotics' words and promises. And interestingly, Cal states that even if the tech wasn't all that it's made out to be, which he hopes it's not, they'll still likely go through with the Ortiz contract, otherwise Congress won't approve future budgets if he doesn't spend his current one, notably stating that they can help fund, quote, the future of warfare. Later, and this seems to take place before the initial analyst and Amherst comm we got back in Season 1, the analyst reports to Cal that she went to a theater and, like they'd hoped, Isaac scraped all of the data from every attendee. One notable nugget of info they found was from a college student who had documented her intentions to try and seduce her virology professor, one Gordon Amherst. The analyst claims to not want to get involved, whereas Cal urges her to send an anonymous tip to the college for an easy win if they can nail the professor for inappropriate actions. Later on, after Season 1's entry, I believe, the two reconvene for an update on the situation. The analyst says that she can confirm that Amherst did not sleep with his student, nor can she confirm if he's working on a biological weapon. Despite this, however, she remains highly concerned about him, even detailing how she dug up that he's had communications with Vitaly Chernenko, a figure that we all know quite well from the Division 1 story originally. Regardless of it all, Cal remains not concerned, and with the lack of any violation with the student, he seems disinterested with the entire thing. Later on, once more, the analyst raises concerns over Amherst, and Cal reminds her that they serve at the pleasure of the president, including his re-election efforts. And he firmly tells her that she needs to back off from the whole thing. Getting closer to the time frame of the outbreak, we hear the analyst inform Cal that they have, quote, one team operational in New York. My assumption is that this is an early division cell, potentially, but that's not confirmed. The two have a disagreement of priority. Cal wants this team to focus on an eco-terrorist threat they've marked in relation to a Christmas tree lighting ceremony, whereas the analyst suggests letting local officials deal with that, while she urges they press on to Amherst. but Cal defiantly states that he is, quote, not a threat. Sometime shortly after the outbreak has begun, we see an interaction between the analyst and Vivian Conley, who was of course the rogue agent we eliminated back in Warlords of New York, but as was revealed in Season 1, she was a very early Division agent as well as a prior engineer at Ortiz Robotics, the same company that developed Isaac and Anna. In this conversation, we get a few interesting details. Conley first tries to play coy about knowing anything of the outbreak or the Division itself. That is, until the analyst informs her that she knows everything, she was there to see it all happen. The analyst then vents about how everything that is happening is her fault, how she followed Cal's orders and didn't pursue Amherst and now the world is falling apart. But Conley assures her that she could have done nothing more, Cal is too influential to throw under the bus for this. And she says not only will he not take the hit for this, but he'll likely find some way to get a promotion out of it. And they end, ironically, by joking about how awful a President Calvin McManus would be, saying, quote, that would really be the end of the world. And I think that is some clever foreshadowing that we might see pay off in the seasons and story to come. The final entry for this subplot ties in nicely to one of the Division 2's early story threads, that being from one of the classified assignments. We learn that the analyst and Cal were supposedly present at the detention center we visit later on, and in fact were there when the asymptomatic carrier was brought in and originally contaminated the facility. They formulate an evacuation plan, and the analyst advises that they try and get someone to go to Amherst's apartment to collect data and potentially try and reverse engineer a vaccine for the green poison. Moving on from the analyst and Cal comms, we have a few that involve the general lore and politics of Ortiz Robotics. Again, this is the company led by Alex and Claire Ortiz, who we met through these comms in Season 1. They developed the descent simulation, the Division's original tech, and the various AI systems used by the Division, the Rogues, and the Black Tusk. A lot of this development and story was given in Season 1 comms, but we get some continuations here. Firstly, we get a short interaction between Cal and Claire. Cal says he's granted Birdie, who we just met in Year 5 Season 2's finale, access to Claire's simulation project, which she's appreciative of. Claire discusses the possibility of fully automating the simulation, requiring less maintenance and direct involvement, and Cal ends off by stating that if there end up being any old or unwanted tech and toys left behind from Natalia's contract with Ortiz, that he will happily inherit them. Later on, we see Alex hosting Cal for a training session in the simulation, and the two operatives that are going in are one Brian Johnson, who we now know later becomes the recruiter, as well as Vivian Conley, and we know that this takes place after her termination at Ortiz, given the curt dialogue between her and Alex. It's stated that their goal during this test is to utilize a mobile shade server to access intel, and then with that use the shade tech to infiltrate a bunker. Later on, Alex and Claire are debating the ongoing design of the mobile shade server, apparently originally sporting a leather briefcase sort of look. They cover how Cal's initial feedback did not like this design, so their new approach will be a metallic exterior while sporting the Shade Phoenix logo on the inside screen. And then later, once again, Alex and Cal meet for Alex to deliver the news that the mobile shade servers are actively being delivered to all rural outposts as well as major metropolitan areas around the country. Cal questions the necessity for this scale of a deployment, where Alex interestingly notes that Nat is appearing to be preparing for war with the vast amount of warhounds she is developing and ordering, and he states that if she's preparing, quote, we should be too. The last major plot thread here is a pretty huge one, probably some of the biggest bombshells of the season, at least back when they were dropped before the season finale, but let's go over it. The first one involves Alex and Claire discussing needing new power supply options for some holograms. Claire discusses her distaste with working with Vikram Malik, who we now know is the head of Odeya Electronics, and he had contracts with the US government. However, Alex reassures her that they can work with Birdie instead, and then they shift over to discuss a shortcoming they've encountered while testing the Isaac AI. That being its very loose rules on flagging users rogue, like them breaking into a building. Because of this problem, Claire discusses the potential for allowing rogue users to retain access to their systems and shade tech even if they're flagged rogue, so that undeserving flags don't result in assured operator demise. And by providing visual and audible rogue alerts via Isaac, they hope that this is enough to alert nearby users of potential dangers. Ultimately, Claire confesses that this is why she prefers Anna over Isaac, which she's gone into detail before, touting how the companion AI has supremely advanced intelligence and personality. We skip forward then to a point during the outbreak, and this likely goes down as the most pivotal and influential comm from this whole bunch, so stay with me while we unpack it. Cal calls into Alex and Claire. We find out that he was apparently in New York when everything began to fall apart. Cal confesses his anxiety over this fact, but Claire reassures him that there's an army to go through before anyone would get to him. Meanwhile, Alex and Claire say that they're, quote, in the bunker, also noting that Birdie has fixed the power issues. This implies, at least from what I can can think of that they are in the Black Tusk headquarters. This was obviously discussed a lot with Birdie during the Season 2 comms, but it also suggests that these two could still be alive in our current timeline, which previously was not a given considering all of their dialogue had been from years past. It's still not guaranteed that that's the case, but from what we know, the Black Tusk bunker remains operational and unattacked, so it would make sense if these two were still alive and kicking. But as for the nature of Cal's call, they mainly discuss an incident that has gone down with a division agent, one that Cal is rather displeased with. He details how the agent broke into a pharmacy to collect some meds and because of that was flagged rogue. And when this happened, they lost access to the network and their Shaytech, leaving them stranded on the streets with little left to fight against any hostile threats. Claire then makes the switch that she and Alex had previously discussed so that rogues retain all access to their systems and tech, but subsequently she asks Cal if this means that he wants to prep, quote, stage 1 of the Hunter Protocol, which is where things get quite interesting. Now we sort of got more context on this from the Season 2 finale and learning more about the recruiter, but this is also quite key. They state that stage 1 is a case-by-case basis, meaning they would deploy one hunter to go deal with one rogue agent if they were truly rogue, meaning that they not just broke into the wrong store, but that they'd actually gone off mission. Now, while they don't go into details for stages beyond 1, we do hear that things go from individual to regional to national. Now, I don't know what a national hunter deployment would look like or what might call for such an action, but I do know that would be one hell of a thing to see down the road one day, maybe even as a killer cliffhanger between Division 2 and 3, who knows? So, that's the big comm of the season. After that, we do have a little mini series here talking more about Anna. We see Alex and Claire discussing the two AIs that conclude that Alex is Isaac and Claire is Anna. The two of them created the two AIs, and because of that, much of their personalities and mannerisms lie within the program's coding. We also see Claire talk to Trig Schneider, requesting him to do a private field test with some of Natalia's in-development warhounds. She says that she wants to see how they'll react with Anna controlling them, and she tries to convince Trig to do it by joking about how they're not going to become sentient and begin murdering operators, which could be taken for humor or as more of a dark omen for Anna's potential capabilities. And then finally, we have two more one-off comms, so I save them for the end. One sees Natalia and Claire discussing the possibility for nanotechnology to be blended with warhounds. Two, where warhounds would enter into combat zones and drop support stations with nanotech to individually assess operator statuses and apply the appropriate aid. Claire says that the nanotech is theoretical for now, and I find that to be very interesting given we recently talked about the focus on practical, real nanotech being described and used in the recent Division Hunted novel. Chronologically, at least 2 years, if not more, would have passed between this comm where Claire is talking about it in theory versus the book's practical applications. So bravo on the setup and the timeline there. And like I said in my Hunted discussion, I think it would be quite cool to see them expand upon the tech idea here and potentially see it used as the primary healing skill basis in the Division 3. And finally, we have an entry between Claire Ortiz and Vivian Conley, presumably prior to her termination that we saw back in Season 1. Conley is complaining to Claire that she shut down the plans for an upgraded firebrand. Conley also refers to this thing as a her, so take from that what you will. Conley says that it never went into proof of concept before being shut down, but Claire states that she personally prototyped and tested the device and concluded that it wasn't viable. This seems to me like the first of a greater series of comms we'll likely get detailing this firebrand idea, so this is likely just a prelude to what we might see during Season 3. But I'm definitely interested to learn more about what it might be, especially with Conley's interesting note of personifying it. And with that, my friends, we wrap up all of the Descent comms and the lore progression released during Year 5 Season 2. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you found this recap useful. There's definitely a lot of interesting lore bites released through this system, and like I mentioned at the start, I know at least a good amount of you don't keep up with this week to week. So, point is, it's fun to recap, hopefully fun to take in and consume as well. Definitely some very interesting things touched on this season, specifically the Hunter Protocol, the ongoing politics we learn about with Ortiz and all of that. And I'm still holding on to my theory that there is more to Cal than we know. Obviously, he's a bad dude, but with Alex and Claire very clearly drawing a line between us and them, between Homeland and Natalia's Black Tusk, I think at heart he has his own agenda he plans to eventually roll out. I just think that in the meantime, he realized that his best chances for survival came at Natalia's side, so that's where he's at for now. But anyway, my friends, that is going to do it for this video. Leave all of your thoughts, reactions, and theories to this information down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Out.